All right. So as we build apps on Microsoft 365, they can be of many shapes, sizes, right? Like we have apps that are destinations, that is a web app or an app on your phone, right? These are apps that you explicitly need to open. But the really true power is when you think of it, to extend your app so that your app spans from all the way being destination, being a web app, being a mobile app, to extension that shows where employees already are. Because we are in Outlook, we're in Teams, we are on Office.com, we are in Viva, right? So there are a number of different apps on Microsoft 365 that we already use for our work. And there's nothing worse, and I guess everybody admits that there's nothing worse than to do a thing for your work and then having to go to another app, to lose the context of your work, having to switch back and forth between multiple apps, because you need that full picture for whatever task you're trying to accomplish. So when you build Microsoft 365 apps, think of it that your apps, the apps that you build for your work, can span from standalone experiences to extensions that show up inside Microsoft 365 where users already are. Let's think about scenario, right? So let's say we wanted to build an application for our company. We're going back to Office, and we still are required to book a seat because we don't want to open up already for everybody. We have limited space, so we want people to book a space ahead of time before they arrive, so that everybody is guaranteed a place to sit, right? And in that scenario, we have few use cases, right? So we are an employee and we're trying to find a seat. We want it for a given date or a portion of the date. And when we arrive in the office, we want to check in to confirm that yes, we're there and we're going to use that seat. It's not available for everybody, right? And then also we have another actor, facilities, who wants to be able to manage the bookings that everybody places, right? And then also afterwards to be able to report on that, right? So there are a number, like when you think about this scenario, you can already envision few ways how you could go about it, how different actors work throughout the workday. Some might be on the go, some might be behind a desk, right? So what are the different ways in which you could support them in their work? And here are a few experiences that you could imagine you would build, right? So if we would start on top left, you might have a personal app in Teams, right? That allows people to manage the bookings directly from Teams, so not having to go anywhere else. Imagine that you are an employee and you want to book a seat on the go. You are on your phone, you are in Viva, and directly from there, you can find available seat, book it, and then when you arrive in the office, check in directly from there, not having to build specific dedicated app that you have to open. It's right there available at your fingertips, right? Imagine another app going all the way to the right where you can see as employee the bookings you have already done in the past. So you can see like where you've been when. If we move down all the way to the left, we have a report, Power BI report that allows facilities and anybody else to see how the different seats are being used over time. And finally, in the middle, for some who prefer that way of work, we can also have intelligent bot, right? That you can kind of use as a personal assistant that understands your intent, to whom you can speak as a human and express your intent. Like, I'm looking for a seat in this place, this type of type, not more than 5 meters away from a coffee, right? Because that's your thing, right? And it can find for you that spot without you having to worry about that, right? So let's have a look, like how would that work in practice? How you could build a Microsoft 365 app for your workplace that is already present where employees are, where users are, so that they don't need to go to a separate place, lose the context of the work to do the thing they have to do. Paolo, that is your cue. Over to you.
Thank you, Waldek. Thank you for setting the context. And let me start sharing my screen so that I think I can explain you how this solution has been built. So first of all, just for your own reference, at this URL, github.com/pmp/pmp.safe-365, you can find the whole source code of the solution that Waldek showed us a few seconds ago. And now let me dig into the solution from a practical point of view. First of all, I will show you the user experience when working with the Viva Connection adaptive card extension, which will be the main topic of my demo today. Of course, we don't have time enough to cover all of the different flavors of UI that we implemented, but we will focus on Viva Connections now. Here you can see this is my Viva Connection dashboard, and here I have the adaptive card extension through which I can book a seat in a location. Like, for example, I can say that I want to go to the headquarters of my company, and I want to look for a seat tomorrow. And I'm looking for a seat tomorrow morning. And then I can say that I feel lucky and I want just to find a free desk, or I can look for a specific desk because I like that desk. It might be because it is close to the coffee machine or something like that. Let me try to be lucky and let me search for a free desk. And wonderful, I found one desk, desk 01, which is really nice and close to the coffee machine, 5 meters far from the coffee machine. I can book it. And as such, tomorrow I will be able to get into my headquarters, and still using the same adaptive card extension, I will be able to check in or check out when I will be done using the desk. As you can see, the experience from an end user point of view is really straightforward and simple. Now let's dig into the technical solution. So first of all, we decided to use Microsoft lists, and so lists stored in SharePoint Online at the very end, to store the locations, to store the desks, and to store the facilities and all the other stuff that represents the repository and the storage of data for our solution. This is for the sake of simplicity and to give you a solution that you can easily deploy in your own environment to play with it. Then we created a set of APIs on top of the lists in Microsoft Lists. And through these APIs, we make available to all of the different flavors of UI components that we have the functionalities. So let me reduce this one. So we have the API to manage bookings, we have the API to manage desks, and to do all the stuff that we need. For example, if I want to book a location, I can just use the bookings endpoint and do my stuff through this API. This API has been registered in Azure Active Directory, in the tenant where we are using this solution. And technically speaking, this is an app registered in Azure AD, which is exposing an API. So we are making the REST API available to all of the client solutions that we built for the SafeDesk 365. And in order to consume this API, you simply need to have the booking.write permission scope assigned to an application which will rely on our backend API. So now that I've showed you what we have under the cover, let me switch to the actual source code of the adaptive card extension. It is a quite rich one, so I will not dig into every single file, but I will give you an idea of how we implemented it. First of all, we have the adaptive card extension by itself, which is a SharePoint framework component, which inherits from base adaptive card extension. In this component, we have a set of properties and a state, like we do in React components. And from a properties point of view, we simply keep track of the settings, like the URI of the application API that we want to consume and the URL that we want to use and stuff like that. While in the state, we keep track of the status of the UI, and specifically, we keep track of all of the available locations, all of the desks that we have, all of the bookings of the user, and those that are for today and stuff like that. So we keep the state of our application to better manage our logic. Then in the onInit method of our component, of our SPFX component, we do a bunch of things. First of all, we initialize the state of the component. And then in every adaptive card extension that we want to create, we can have two different flavors of UI elements. There could be card views and quick views. What we saw here while booking our desk, this one is called a card view, and it is an experience based on a predefined set of UI templates. We have 3 templates, one just based on text, one based on text and a secondary text, and the third one based on an image, which is the one I'm using right here, so that I can show a nice image and a UI with up to 2 buttons in the UI. Then when you click on one of these buttons, this one is called Quick View, and this one is based on a JSON template created using the adaptive card JSON syntax. So here, as long as you rely on the adaptive card schema, you can build whatever kind of UI experience you like. And that's why you were able to see different UI components through the navigation flow of the user. So if I go back here we are simply registering the card views and the quick views that we are going to use in our solution. The welcome one is the one we see by default as the welcome screen of the adaptive card extension. Then we can select the flow when we want to book a new desk. We can go for the free or for the specific desk. We can even get a response that there are no available spots if that is the case. And we can get the confirmation of a check-in or of a checkout when the user will do check-in, check-out. So once we have configured the state and the registration of the cards, we can fetch the actual data from the API. So we rely on a fetch data method that we invoke asynchronously so that we can start rendering the UI of the adaptive card. In fact, as you can see here, if I will refresh, you see we are now loading, and once we will be done, we will have the actual data available. That's what we do in the fetch data. And in the fetch data, we simply work using the functionalities that we have out of the box in SharePoint Framework. What do I mean? Well, whenever you want to consume in SharePoint Framework, whether you are creating an adaptive card extension like we are doing right now, or a web part, or an extension, or a team stub, doesn't really matter what kind of UI component you are building, but in SharePoint Framework, you can always easily consume an external API, which can be Microsoft Graph or a third-party API. And you can do that safely and securely using Azure Active Directory as the security infrastructure supporting you in the consumption of the backend API. Here, what we do is to use the context of SharePoint Framework to get through the AAD token provider factory object. As you can imagine, based on the name, it is a factory, so it will create something for us, and specifically, it will create a token provider, so an object that we can use to get an access token from a security point of view, from an authorization point of view, that we can then use to consume the target API that we want to use. So we simply create a token provider, and we ask to the token provider to give me a token for the API that I want to consume, which is precisely this application registered in Azure Active Directory, meaning that I will get an access token, which will allow me to consume this REST API, being able to get the bookings, the desks, and all the stuff that I need for my logic. And that's why, once I have got the access token, I can create an instance of an object. Here, to have a better and cleaner code, we decided to isolate the client logic to consume the API in a dedicated client class that we have right here. In this client class, we simply use the token that we get through the token provider, and then we use a client object to invoke the backend API. How do we do that? Well, to keep the architecture clean and reusable, we decided to create a package, so an NPM package that we called SafeDesk365-SDK, which is right now in preview version, as you can see. And we are relying on this SDK to consume the backend API, so that whether we will create the ACE, the adaptive card extension here, or the team stub, or any other, or the bot, or any other solution, we can always rely on the same SDK and reuse the same logic. So what we do here, we rely on our client, and we get the location, we get the bookings, we filter the bookings of today, and then we configure the state of our component. Once we have done that, we need to render the UI, and the UI can be rendered either using the card views or the quick views. I will give you a quick overview of the idea. When we create a card view, this will be a TypeScript class, which will simply define the buttons that we want to show in the UI. And here we simply say, okay, let me see if I have any booking for today. Because if I have any, I will show the button to create a new booking, as well as the button to check in or to check out based on where I am. If I'm already checked in, I will have the button to check out. If I still need to check in, I will see a check-in button. Then, when the user will click on the button, I will simply associate an action, which will be, for example, let's focus on the action to book a new desk. If I select to book a new desk, I will show a quick view, which is the one built on adaptive card JSON schema, which will be the one I registered before in the onInit method. Let's go to this quick view, and in the book selection quick view, we can see that we have yet another class built with TypeScript again, in which we define the template, so the JSON file, which will render the actual UI of my component. I will provide through a get data method that we have in all of the quick views. I will define the data that I will use to automatically do data binding in the UI of my adaptive card. And then I can eventually manage the triggering of actions inside the UI. So for example, when I click on the book button, this is the quick view, this list of locations and this list of time slots are based on the data binding of an object that I'm providing through the get data method. And you can see here I'm providing the locations. So in the JSON matching to this quick view, I use the adaptive card syntax. Here is version 1.3. And I'm saying that I have a container in which I will show a text. Then I will show a choice set. And the items in the choice set will be the locations that I have in my data source. In fact, I say the data source are the locations that I have in my data. And for every location, I will show the name and the address, and the value will be the name. Then I will show the date control of adaptive card syntax, and then I will show another choice to select if it will be the morning or the afternoon. Once I'm done, I will have a button of type submit, which will trigger the action that I have in the quick view right here in the on action in order to start the process of booking my desk. And again, I will rely on my npm package with the client library, and I will execute all of the logic to manage the booking of my desk. So as you can see, you can really create clean and simple solutions where you rely on a back-end API to provide enterprise-level functionalities, and then you can build on top of it any kind of UI components you need and you like for example, an adaptive card extension or a web part like I have right here, which is just yet another SharePoint framework component, still using the same SDK, the same logic, and the same backend API. And that's really powerful because you can easily reuse the same logic, the same code across multiple solutions, all built for the Microsoft 365 ecosystem. I think that's all for me for today. So back to you, Vesa, I guess. And
yep.
Thanks for following this demo.
Excellent. Thank you, Paolo. Really cool stuff. And that is a really nice, cool looking solution. And let me quickly show a few slides and we'll close up after that.